Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty crucial. I think building sustainable agri-food systems.
Yeah, this is a big one.
It is. It is. And luckily we've got a great resource to guide us. Introduction to Agroecology. Our listeners are really interested in how farming practices connect to the bigger picture of food systems.
Right.
And they're really passionate about supporting local food production and making sure farmers get a fair deal.
Absolutely.
So this book really seems to be a good fit. It dives deep into creating those food systems that work with nature, not against it.
It does. And it emphasizes that we need to think about food systems holistically.
Yeah.
It's not just about what happens on the farm,
right?
It's the whole web,
right.
Processing, distribution, consumption, even waste management.
Right. Everything's connected.
Everything. Exactly. The book uses this analogy of a spider web.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. You tug on one thread, the whole thing vibrates.
Makes sense.
And in this case, farming practices are that thread.
So it's like farming practices are the starting point.
Exactly. What farmers do has a ripple effect throughout the entire system.
Oh, wow.
Impacting the environment, social structures, even economics.
So we're talking big impacts here.
It impacts.
Okay, so let's break down some of those ripple effects. The book highlights the 3 pillars of sustainability, environmental, social, and economic.
Right.
Let's start with the environment. How does specific farming practices, on the ground actually play a role?
Well, agroecology is all about working with nature, not against it.
Okay.
So think crop rotation, organic farming.
Right.
Practices that build healthy soil, which is really the foundation of a healthy ecosystem.
Yeah.
Healthy soil means better water retention, less erosion, and more nutrients for plants.
Oh, so it's all about that foundation.
Yeah.
And healthy soil also plays a part in combating climate change, right?
It does, absolutely. Healthy soil acts like a carbon sink.
Really?
Pulling carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, storing it underground.
Wow.
It's a natural way to mitigate climate change.
So it's like a win-win.
Yeah, a key benefit of agroecological practices.
That's incredible.
Oh.
Okay, so it's not just about growing food, it's about a healthier planet.
Exactly.
Now, what about the social side of things? You mentioned food sovereignty earlier. What does that actually mean?
Food sovereignty is about communities having more control over their food systems.
Okay.
It's about them deciding where their food comes from, how it's produced, who benefits.
So they have a say.
They have a say. It's about empowering communities to make choices that align with their values and needs, especially access to healthy, culturally appropriate food.
I see. So it's not just about quantity. It's about the quality and the value behind the food.
Yes.
And this ties directly into, your interest in encouraging local food production.
Right.
Because strengthening local food systems can actually help build stronger, more resilient communities.
Okay.
It can create jobs, preserve traditional farming knowledge, and foster that sense of connection and belonging.
Oh.
That's wonderful. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've covered the environment and social impacts. What about the economic side? How does all of this affect farmers' livelihoods?
Well, this is where things get a bit complex, and the book doesn't shy away from that.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges is the disconnect between the market price of food and the true cost of production, especially for those committed to sustainable practices.
What do you mean by true cost?
Well, it's more than just the expenses of seeds, labor, equipment.
Right.
It also factors in those hidden costs like environmental damage, soil degradation.
I see.
The depletion of natural resources.
Those are the long-term costs.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging the long-term sustainability of the system itself.
So it's almost like we're not paying the full price at the checkout counter.
Yeah.
We're passing those costs along to future generations and the planet.
You've hit the nail on the head.
That's a bit unsettling.
It is. And that's why supporting farmers who are doing things the right way, investing in the long-term health of our planet and communities is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I agree.
And that leads us to the next big question. How do we encourage local food production and ensure fair compensation for farmers?
Let's explore that in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. So we've been talking about the big picture benefits of sustainable agri-food systems.
Right.
But how can we actually support local food production and, make sure those amazing farmers are getting a fair deal?
Yeah, I'm really eager to learn about concrete actions.
Yeah.
What can we actually do? Introduction to Agroecology highlights a range of strategies.
It does.
What are some of those?
Well, it starts with something you're probably familiar with, farmers markets.
Ah, yes.
And they're not just about buying food. They're
Right.
about connecting directly with the people who grow it, understanding their practices, and, experiencing that vibrant energy of a community coming together.
Yeah, there's something really special about strolling through those stalls, the sights, the smells, the conversations.
Absolutely.
It's an experience you just don't get at the supermarket.
Exactly. And beyond that sensory delight, farmers markets have a real impact.
Okay.
They help shorten the supply chains we talked about,
Right.
fresher, more flavorful food, and a reduced carbon footprint.
Ah, that makes sense.
Plus, the money you spend goes directly to the farmers,
Right.
strengthening the local economy.
So it's a win-win.
It is.
Speaking of shorter supply chains, the book also mentions community-supported agriculture, or CSAs.
Yes.
Can you explain how those work and why they're beneficial?
Sure. Imagine becoming a shareholder in a local farm for a season.
Okay,
You pay up front for a share of the harvest.
got it.
And then throughout the growing season, you receive regular deliveries of fresh seasonal produce.
Like a subscription box.
Exactly, like a subscription to the bounty of the land.
I love that. So you're directly invested in the success of that farm. And the farmer has that guaranteed income stream.
Right? Provides stability. It's a true partnership.
It really is. And it goes beyond the economic benefits, right?
Does CSAs foster a sense of community among members?
Oh, how so?
Well, they often connect at pickup events, share recipes and tips. Some CSAs even offer volunteer opportunities
Oh, wow.
on the farm so you can get your hands dirty and really connect with the source of your food.
I love that. It's more than just a transaction.
It is.
It's about building relationships and understanding where our food comes from.
Absolutely.
But what about those who can't afford to join a CSA or live in areas where farmers markets aren't accessible?
That's a crucial point, and the book acknowledges those barriers, access and affordability.
Right.
And that's where policy comes in.
Okay.
Local governments can play a key role in creating a more supportive environment for local food systems.
What kind of policies are we talking about?
We'll think initiatives that support urban agriculture,
Okay.
making land more accessible to new farmers, particularly in underserved areas, or incentivizing schools and hospitals to source food locally.
So it's about shifting priorities
It is.
to make local food more accessible and affordable.
Exactly.
So it's about leveling the playing field and addressing those systemic issues
Yes.
that often disadvantage smaller sustainable farms.
You got it. And beyond policy, there are other creative ways to increase access,
Like what?
like mobile markets that bring fresh produce to food deserts,
Oh, that's a great idea.
or community gardens that empower residents to grow their own food.
So it sounds like we need a multifaceted approach.
We do.
Individual actions and systemic change.
Absolutely. It's
Oh.
about fostering a cultural shift where supporting local food becomes the norm, not the exception.
Right. It's got to be a cultural shift.
And this brings us to the other side of the equation, ensuring fair compensation for farmers.
Right. We've talked about the why. Now let's explore the how.
Exactly.
What are some concrete strategies to ensure those who are feeding our communities are receiving a fair deal?
Let's explore that in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so we're back and ready to tackle this big question of fair compensation for farmers. We've talked about why it's important, but now let's get into the how.
Yeah, and Introduction to Agroecology really dives into the challenges farmers face.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't sugarcoat it.
No, it doesn't. It highlights those systemic issues that make it tough for farmers to earn a decent living, especially those practicing sustainable methods.
Right, and one of the big hurdles the book mentions is the volatility of commodity prices.
Right, those numbers that are always bouncing around on the news.
Exactly. So how do those impact farmers, on the ground?
Imagine you're a farmer, you've invested time, money, hard work into your crop. And then the market price just plummets
Oh, no.
due to factors completely out of your control.
Well, that's going to be tough.
It is, and that's the reality for so many farmers, especially smaller operations.
It must make it so hard to plan for the future,
Absolutely. That volatility makes it really difficult to invest in their farms and just, feel secure.
Yeah, that sense of security is so important.
Mm.
The book also talks about subsidies.
Mm.
How do those play into all of this?
Subsidies can be a bit of a double-edged sword.
How so?
In many countries, they're often directed towards larger conventional farms,
Really?
which actually further disadvantages the smaller, more sustainable ones.
Oh, wow. So it's like the opposite of what we want.
Yeah, it can create an unfair advantage and perpetuate a system that prioritizes quantity over quality.
It's like we're incentivizing the wrong practices, the ones that aren't good for the environment.
Exactly. That's a key point the book raises. We need to rethink how we use those subsidies
Right.
to actually support practices that benefit both people and the planet.
Okay, so instead of propping up a system that, has all these hidden costs,
Right.
we should be rewarding those who are investing in soil health, biodiversity, and community well-being.
Exactly.
Now, the book also talks about something called ecosystem services. Could you explain what that means?
Yeah, ecosystem services are those benefits that nature provides that we often take for granted.
Right, like clean air and water.
Exactly. Clean water, healthy soil, carbon sequestration, pollinator habitats.
It's like all the things that make life possible.
Exactly. And those are essential services that benefit everyone.
But we don't really pay for them.
We don't, and that's the problem. The book argues that we need to find ways to account for those hidden costs and reward farmers for their stewardship.
It's like we're expecting farmers to provide these critical services for free.
Right. While also competing in a system that undervalues their products.
That just doesn't seem right.
It's not. And the book explores some solutions that are gaining traction, like payments for ecosystem services.
Oh, interesting. What does that look like?
Imagine programs where farmers receive financial incentives for practices that enhance biodiversity, improve water quality, or sequester carbon.
Ah, so they get rewarded for those things.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the true value of their work.
Not just the food, but all the other benefits.
Absolutely. It's about shifting that mindset, seeing farmers as stewards of the land, not just food producers.
I like that. Now, we talked about farmers markets and CSAs earlier. How do those contribute to fair compensation?
Well, those models cut out the middleman,
Right.
which allows farmers to keep more of the profit.
So it's more direct.
It is. And it gives consumers a better understanding of the true cost of food.
Transparency is key.
It is. It creates a more equitable system where everyone benefits.
I love that. So
Yeah.
Introduction to Agroecology really emphasizes that building a sustainable food system isn't just about individual actions, it's about transforming the whole system.
It is. It's about valuing and rewarding those who are producing food in a way that nourishes both people and the planet.
Well, this has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has.
We've learned so much about how interconnected everything is.
We have. And, every choice we make about our food has a ripple effect.
So by supporting those local sustainable food systems and advocating for fair compensation,
Right.
we can create a better future.
Absolutely. A more just resilient and delicious future.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into building sustainable agri-food systems. Let's all continue to learn, make conscious choices, and support those incredible farmers who are working so hard to feed us and care for our planet.